For a start, I don't think that it's good to have one plan for every athlete. I don't believe that an athlete is not talented when just my way of training doesn't work for that person. I think that every athlete needs an individualized training plan. And the plan doesn't just consist of a week or a month or half a year or 12 months. It consists of where are you now and where precisely would you like to be in about 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time. Hello and welcome guys, my name is Aram. I'm founder of Aram Training and of Rower. Today I would like to talk about something that has nothing to do with rowing technique, but only with coaching. My view on certain things in coaching are different to some of the views I've seen around with other coaches. I don't know if they're better or not. I just see that some things just seem to work well. I've been asked many times to talk about my personal coaching philosophy. What is the difference? What are my obstacles? Where do I want to go with it? So this video is only about how do I plan a full season with an athlete. I precisely have a look what the person has done before. Was it high intensity sport? Was it low endurance sport? From this on, I try to look at the muscles and the joints and the bones. So depending on the sport you do, you have a different bone density. Your joints have a different stability structure. And your endurance is predominantly developed in certain areas and in certain areas not. Especially when I work with masters athletes, I precisely have a look at what they really have done up to this point when they start to work with me. Some people have just started to row 3 years ago and they haven't done serious sports before. So all of these things have to be taken into account. I'm not a big fan to burn people within 12 months to help them reach a goal that is somewhat worthy of reaching, and then that's it. It is certainly possible to do a lot in 12 months, but the interesting thing is what happens after the 12 months. And I want to make sure, and this is my prime concern, that people I work with become healthier and stronger and fitter, and when they stop with high competitive rowing, at which age soever, be it a junior or master or everything in between, I want them to be very healthy. I do not want them to have any pain or any injuries. So my main concern is not to risk anything in terms of injuries. If I can avoid an injury by doing some extra training in this or this area and rather not develop as quickly as it might have been possible in the first 6 months or first 12 months, I'm happy to take that risk. Because I've seen what happens if you don't. If you don't hesitate to take health risks, you will have fast development for the first 6 to 12 months, maybe 2 years, and after that there will be a big drop. And this drop is usually quite severe because it's accompanied by health issues that are really a big problem to cope with. This could be a consistent overload of training which results in the need of a long break. But people want to do sports all life. So I have to make sure to bring people to the highest peak they can possibly be. And I'm quite serious about this one. But I also have to be sure that they're healthy afterwards too. It takes a fine balance and experience to get people there. The next step I take usually is to fix a goal. And after I have collected all the needed data and talked with the person, I can help to find a goal that is realistic. In general, if I have to build up a full year, I would start usually around October. Simply because most of the peaks of season that I plan for are usually in summer or late summer. So I would go for the World Championships, I would go for the Under-23 Worlds, I would go for the Masters World Rowing Regatta, I'd go for some major race that usually happens in the summer. Everything that comes before this, and be it qualification or whatever, is a step. I don't like to peak people in terms of training planning for qualification regattas. Either you're strong enough, then your qualification regatta should never be your peak, or you're not strong enough, then you're not competitive enough yet to go to the big event. It's not about going to a big championship. Just being part of it is not a goal. The goal is to be there and be in front. When I start to plan the season, I always have my final goal in mind. And from this point on, I have a certain principle. In order to understand the broader meaning of it, I have to explain two very opposite systems. The first system that is used quite widely is a low endurance-based system with very little intensities over the winter, even over the spring, and even over the summer. The main body of intensities for these people will be the racing season. So from regatta to regatta to regatta until the peak of season, they will become faster and stronger anyway, because every regatta is like a high intensity training. This is one philosophy. The other philosophy is to do a very high intensity training with a lot of load, even during the fall, during the winter, during the spring, and of course in the summer. The philosophy behind it is that a rowing race is mainly all about handling lactate. And lactate is something you have to be able to cope with. So the system foresees a lot of high intensity training to finally prepare people. And every training is a test, constant competition. Both systems actually can work if you find the right people for it. If you don't have the right people for it, the system will not work. Interestingly, the so-called talents in countries, nations, teams, clubs, whatever, universities who work with one or the other systems are usually the ones who just happen to be able to cope with one or the other system better. If the person is not able to cope with the system well, then it's not a talent. I don't like that approach. My personal approach is that I want to look at an athlete and see what I suggest the person trains actually does to him. I want to see the influence of my training. So I have an influence-based training philosophy. I take both philosophies into my system and I adapt it. I know that lactate is something that can be misleading. 3 millimole lactate for one person is certainly affecting this person differently than 3 millimole lactate will affect someone else. So I have to take in more parameters to measure. So I come up with a system that takes into account 5 different parameters that help me judge how the training influences an athlete. Is it beneficial, or do I have to change something? I don't believe that an athlete is not talented when just my way of training doesn't work for that person, as long as we have a motivated person here. The first thing I do is ask for the perceived load. On a scale of 1 to 6, 1 is easy as pie, 6 is about to bring death, to put it metaphorically. If a training that I intended to be around 2.5 turns out to be a 5, I have to be careful about the next days. If a training that should have been at around 1 turns out to be a 2, I'm careful. If a training that should have been a 5 turns out to be a 2, either that person hasn't been able to go all the way, or I haven't prepared the person to do so. The second thing I take into account is the heart rate. The heart rate alone won't tell me a lot, because the heart rate is easy to be influenced. If you are nervous, if you haven't slept a lot, if you have eaten before a lot of food, a lot of certain type of food, your heart rate might have changed. So I compare the heart rate with the perceived load. It's not a one-shot story. It's a development of one athlete over the course of a training time, which is more than half a year. So I precisely look at the developments and the correlations of all the values with each other. The third one I take into account is the lactate. I don't always measure lactate, but especially when we train on the bi-rower, I have a great opportunity to have realistic rowing and to measure lactate. So I have a pretty good chance to see how certain loads feel for the athlete and correspond with heart rate and correspond with lactate, and this is probably what it will be in the boat. Because the bi-rower is so similar to the boat, the load is so equal, I can judge it better. The fourth parameter I take into account is the measured performance. This could be watts, 500 meter splits, this could be a 2K time, this could be just a 500 meter split over a long training session. Just about anything that helps me. But as measured splits and watts also vary quite a lot if we don't talk about the bi-rower, but if we talk about the boat. You could have a headwind, you can have a tailwind. The water could be cold, so it's slower. It could be hot, so the water is faster, but the heat could be more difficult. There are many things I have to put in correlation with the other three values I've just talked about. And the fifth one is my training log. The training log actually is one of the most important tools I use to judge how a training influences an athlete. As you can see, I have a lot of different parameters here. This is in German, it's for one of my Austrian athletes. This is the sleep quality, it's the sleep hours, it's the rest heart rate. The heart rate you have 1 minute after getting up in the morning. It's the difference, which is automatically calculated, it's just an Excel sheet, and the way you feel over the course of the day. These key parameters tell me a lot about how the training works for you. Your sleeping hours will give me precise overview on the average if you're influencing any elevated heart rate, rest heart rate with a lack of sleep. If the sleep hours are normal and the sleep quality too, I can guess that the training has had an effect. If the sleep quality goes down and there are no mental reasons whatsoever, it could be that the training currently is too intense. Many athletes who have had very intense training know that the sleep quality simply goes down because the body takes all the time at night too to recover and repair. Every intense load is a type of destruction for the cells in the body. To a certain extent, this is something I want, because then we have rebuild. If it's too much and the sleep quality suffers for too long, I have to change something. The rest heart rate and the heart rate 1 minute after you woke up tell me two things. The rest heart rate, of course, and the difference. If your difference between waking up, measuring, getting up after 1 minute, waiting, and then measuring again, if it's too high on a consistent basis, I have to change something and give you more lower endurance values. There are individual differences between the athletes who have about equal low endurance key values. But on a long-term basis, these values, the difference is supposed to drop. It can be anywhere from 5 to 6 strokes per minute up to 20 strokes per minute. If the difference changes in terms of the rest heart rate going down or being constant, but the 1 minute stand-up heart rate goes up a bit, so the difference becomes more, I know that some of the training I'm doing is actually affecting his recovery capability. Usually these are cardiovascular effects if the stand-up heart rate lifts a bit. If even the rest heart rate goes up, I know that the training has been quite intense, and this is not a bad thing. I just need to see what it does to my athlete. I need to see this long before my athlete is having a breakdown. I need to respond. The daily feeling is again a simple scale of perceived load, which means 1, you're having the best day of your life, you're perfectly recovered, everything is easy. 6 means you're very sick, not healthy at all, everything is being too much. People judge their daily feeling differently, yet you will get an overview. People usually judge things over the course of many months the same way. So again, for me, it's an instrument that tells me what has been the overall development. This is simply what we have trained. This will tell me quite a lot about the wind, which direction the wind came from, how strong it was, again, perceive. I don't care for absolute values because you can never measure in the boat. So what was it like for the athlete? If the temperature is very hot, this will have an effect on the athlete too, as if it is cold. There are athletes who don't like cold weather, there are athletes who don't like hot weather. So you will get to learn the individual effects on this. So that's all about the weather during training. Then simple overviews of the training units. So I have the total amount of minutes here per exercise. This would be a bike, then a single. For every fraction of a session, so if you do 20 minutes on a bike, how did it feel for you? Was it easy? Was it good? If you did 30 minutes on the bi rower, how was it? Was it easy? Was it hard? How did it feel for you? And all these small parameters tell me quite a lot. To give you a bit of my background, I'm not a data freak at all. I'm usually a person who feels things, sees things, and listens to things. So I use all 3 senses quite a lot. Yet the data, even for me, is very important. I know it's a lot of work for the athletes. On the other hand side, if you want to train professionally, you better be able to fill out a few simple facts every day. If this is not possible for you, then you're not willing to train professionally. If you say A, you gotta say B too. Then we go a bit to the right. So we have different training zones. And the thing about the different training zones, there's a good reason for this. I will explain the different training zones later on. I have the minutes in the zone, the heart rate, the stroke rate if we measure the lactate and the watts or the speed for every different zone. So then we have the weight training, which type of weight training, how many reps. Then we have the isometric core stability training. This is one of the key elements. I will talk about it later on. And everything about mobility. We have certain mobility exercises that are very important to stay healthy and stay ready for loads that are coming. So again, I count up all the minutes. And then we have two factors here. This doesn't always have to be filled out, but if there's something, you should have a place to take a note. So the first thing is, what have I understood today for myself? This could be either something that's about rowing technique, it could be something about how can I push myself, or something that is totally different, how to separate things that went bad in personal life, things that went well in rowing, how do they interconnect, etc. So this could be about anything that relates to your rowing life. And this is just a general remark for the training session. For me, look arm, something happened during the race, or I had to stop and readjust my rigger, or something that I need to know about. One of the key things about the training log is not that I am the one who's tracking you. I need it as a judging tool. The thing about the training log is that it helps you to understand yourself better. I'm not a big fan of being a bossy coach. I'm a mentor. And this is my prime job. I want to show you how you can make the best of yourself, but you have to get to know yourself very well. And the training log is one of the key things that will teach you how to do it. Now let's talk about the training zones. I usually name them by the lactates I like to be at. I know I'm not always there, but as you just saw before, I have 4 other parameters that tell me precisely where the person really is. So we would have 4 different zones between 0.6 and 1.8 millimole, simply because every zone has certain effects. If you cannot measure lactate, don't worry, I have 4 other parameters that help me to judge what you're doing and how it affects you. It's just my way of naming things. I would stick to 0.6 to 1.8, 2, maybe a bit of 3 from October, this is when the new season starts, until January. It always depends on the athlete. If I have an athlete who has done this for a while now, who is stable enough, I'm happy to start with a 3 and 4 millimole earlier. If my athlete is not ready yet, I would give him time and take a lot of time to build up that fundament of the pyramid. You see, it's pyramid shaped because I believe this is about how I would like to distribute all the loads for my athletes. So the largest part would be these zones. This is everything below the aerobic level. This helps me, first of all, to generate a huge fundament basis of recovery potential. The better I am here, maybe up to 4 millimole. So the bigger the space is, the higher I can put my pyramid. So probably the 2 peaks should be a lot higher here, but it's only possible if this is quite wide. If my pyramid fundament is not wide enough, I cannot peak my people. I can, but that's a story I said at the beginning. The pyramid will collapse eventually. I will talk about this just in a second. In October, November, December, I'm around here in these zones, and then I will gradually go up into the 3 and 4 millimoles. These can be sessions like 2 times 10 minutes at 3 millimoles. This could be sessions like 2 times 30 minutes, 3 millimoles. Over the course of the season, these sessions are becoming longer just to become shorter again. The reason behind this is that I'm training my people for short distance racing, which is 2,000 meters. I'm not preparing them to do a 6-kilometer race or a 12-kilometer race. This just happens. The more the season matures, the shorter my intensity sessions have to become. They just become more. Starting in January, February, March, I gradually shift and implement a bit of 5 millimole too. The idea about the millimole levels is very simple. I believe in the fundamental basis of solid low endurance, because this allows my athletes to do a lot of high intensities later on. First, they recover quicker, a lot quicker than athletes who do not have big fundamental basis of low endurance. The second thing is the low endurance helps my athletes to build up the anaerobic level. The later you get into the anaerobic zone during a rowing race, the longer you can go later on. It's very simple. There are two ways to train a rowing athlete. Either you teach the rowing athlete to enter the anaerobic level stage very late in a race, or you can teach the body of the athlete and the athlete mentally to cope with lactate, with high volumes of lactate. And this is basically also the difference between the two systems I told you before about. But my vision is to use both, and it is possible. I build up a huge fundamental basis of low endurance because this helps my athletes to recover, and this helps my athletes to enter the anaerobic level in a rowing race very late. Also, I teach them to cope with high amounts of lactate, and they're able to cope with it very well as their bodies are now prepared to recover quicker between high intensities. So when we talk about April, May, June, this is where I spend quite a lot of time in the high intensity areas. So this would be a mix of low. I keep a bit of the basics, but I make it smaller and focus more on this one. But I still do quite a lot here. So some coaches believe that you have to reduce the overall amount of minutes the more you come to the peak of season. I don't think so. My experience is with both lightweights and heavyweights and women and men, the key issue is to keep the volume at the same level. You just change the intensities within the volume. The volume is not just about to make you stronger, the volume is also a repair mechanism. Every time you spend time here, this helps your body to repair because your metabolism is brought up to a certain level where all the cells can regenerate. Weight training is a key element in rowing. Some people say that you can either do hypertrophy weight training or you can develop the intensities. I'm not so sure. Most of the literature, as far as I know, has been tested with sports students, not with professional athletes, simply because professional athletes were busy doing what they have to do, train to be a professional athlete. There was no time to test them for any university studies, so people could write books about it. Whenever we take the classic literature on sports science, I think it's very important to know about it, and some things work very well. But I learned to be a bit careful and a bit reserved to take everything for real that's written there, simply because I found out that certain things work in a different way. You just can't take all the information and project it onto your professional athletes. The weight training usually is something I do on a hypertrophy level in October, November, December. Literature says that you can't do more than 6 weeks of hypertrophy with 3 units a week and up to 6 sets per training session, and almost no 3 and 4 millimole development. The point is that rowers are so well developed in the cardiovascular areas that it's almost impossible to bring rowers even to the point where they are able to have that same hypertrophy effect that was seen with people tested for the literature. I was able to extend the weight training for more than 6 weeks with 3 sessions. I did have an hypertrophy effect. It worked well for up to 12 weeks, so that's about twice the amount, sometimes even 18 weeks. Hypertrophy weight training is something some athletes and coaches don't want, especially for lightweights, not to gain weight. But as a matter of fact, most of the weight you gain in the first weeks is water to help the muscles recover, and you will lose most of that. What I really want to have is the effect of strengthening the joints and the bone density. The bigger your muscle gets, the more stable your joints have to be. So my joints and the bones are next to the muscles, the key thing that help me cope with all the intensities I have in the summer. So if I want to keep my athletes healthy and resistant to high load, high intensity training, I have to prepare them in the fall with a lot of low endurance and with hypertrophy weight training. It's very simple. There is usually no extra weight gain other than a few grams. If you do it in the summer, that's probably the wrong point. My experience is that I have to stop with this around January, February. It depends on the athlete and on the individual development. Sometimes I add a bit of endurance weight training, things like 100 reps or 200 repetitions. Very, very selective, not a lot. The mental component. This is something I add quite a lot. The key thing is to help athletes to lose the fear to fail. Interestingly, most people, let them be professional rowers, professional athletes, people you meet on the street who don't do any sports, most of us are afraid to fail. I know this from my personal experience. I know it from all the people I've worked so far. These were professional athletes and just business people I worked with who have nothing to do with sports whatsoever. The point here is we learn when we fail, something bad is going to happen because this is not what we want to do. But that's the wrong approach. I actually want to fail. Failing means to teach my body and my brain, look, my dear, whatever you have here is not enough. So you have to improve. The body wants to improve automatically anyway. It's not like we have to force ourselves to improve. We improve automatically. Have you ever seen a small baby having burnout because it hasn't succeeded in grabbing first ball or succeeded in grabbing some puppet? It's a natural thing to want to become better. So I use it. Now, hands-on in rowing training, how do I use it here? In a race, many people have to learn to push themselves. And my experience is that most of the pushing work is usually a huge effort to overcome to fear, to give everything, really everything, and to take the risk that it might not be enough. And when you ask people, how was the race? They'd say, yeah, I was happy with the race. It went well, but then I saw that it just didn't work, and I could have done maybe 2% more, but it was, and they don't really finish. How do you judge you could have done 2% more? You don't know. You don't even know what 100% are because you never go there. If I prepare my athletes with a lot of low endurance training, I can spend quite a lot of time in the high intensity area. I can now start to play with the mental component. The mental component is learn to fail. Very simple. So we would do sessions in the summer or early spring, like 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 3 minutes, all out. So the first sessions usually are not all out. They're exhausting, but not all out. It takes time for the body to learn to kill yourself in the first minute and then have another 2 effective minutes. The first minute that it takes to exhaust yourself to a level where you think one more stroke is not possible. This is the homework. The development work, the bonus, are the last 2 minutes of it. The key is to tell my athletes that after 1 minute, I want you to be at the position where you say, not one more stroke is possible, period. And then you risk to fail. And that risking to fail teaches your body that you don't fail. There's more than you thought. And this is not something you keep in your mind as something logical, rational. No, this is something you remember as a feeling, because feelings are the only things we really learn from. So I have to teach my athletes feelings. The loss of fear is a very intense feeling, simply because fear is one of the most important feelings we have in life. 1 minute to bring yourself to the border. And if you want to conquer another country, you got to cross your own border and get into a different country. So you spend 2 minutes in different country. So reach new territory. And over the course of season, my athletes learn this. And it doesn't kill them physically because they have such a huge body of low endurance that they recover so quickly that I can play this game quite often. This, for me, has turned out to be a greater key than all the high intensity work I can do in terms of physical development. Of course, there are biochemical processes going on in the body, so the body learns to produce quicker speeds and everything. But besides all of that, I think it's a mental thing. You got to give yourself a reason to do so. The reason why you want to go all out is because you want to win this thing, but people are hesitant to do so. So I got to teach them, don't worry if you don't win it. You give everything you have. And I don't care about the position. You can be first. If you didn't go all out, it was not a good race, and you want a good race. If you're last, but you gave everything and it was more than the last time because you were just better because you had improved, it's a good race. And with this philosophy, eventually, I don't think that there will be a lot of people who are able to beat you. It's very simple. I once had an athlete. He came from a different club to me. He wanted me to build him up gradually, slowly, over the course of time. He had the fear of being burned in the other club, so he came to me. I started to do the weight training with him. One of the first things he said to me was, Aram, before a race you have to hold my hand because I'm so scared. I said, no, I'm not the person to hold your hand. I'm the person to give you enough self-confidence that you can hold someone else's hand just before your own race. And we did weight training. It was fall. It was a very simple weight training, not a lot of weight, but a lot of mental training. And I usually implement the mental training in a way that people don't really realize it. I don't call it mental training, but it's the same effect. So we did 3 repetitions of squats. Very little weight, 30 kilos, 40 kilos, nothing. But the squats would be done in a speed of 60 seconds per repetition. So a long time to go down and a long time to go up. After 2 reps, the legs were shaking like crazy. The person was out of his mind. He said, no, I can't. So look, buddy, you can always stop. But if you have the energy to tell me you can't, you still have quite a lot of energy left to do a 3rd repetition. Okay, I go. And he went. And then he said, shaking, no, I can't. And he stopped. He was still in his safe zone. His body would have done some more. So it's okay, buddy. I accept where you are because this is normal. Everyone has to learn it. You want to try it another time because now you want to reach the border and cross it. You want to conquer new territory. He said, okay, I want to try it again. 1st rep, 2nd rep, 2nd and a half. It was, no, impossible. I said, okay, use your brain. And when the muscle tells your brain, stop doing this, I'm running out of energy slowly, but I do, your brain amplifies this and said, my muscle just said it will pass out. I said, okay, buddy, I'm behind you. You have maybe 30 kilos on the bar. I can catch you. So I want you to go down and trust yourself and let your brain tell your muscles, I can do 1 more. And muscles, if you pass out, you pass out. I will see. So the person did this. And the muscles were telling the brain, stop, don't do it, it's exhausting, it might be dangerous, you might fail. And he forced himself, no, okay, fail. It was such a fight, an internal fight. Eventually, he went down, all the way up. His brain kept on saying, muscles, you can, do it. I demand you to do it. Go up. And then he could have done a 4th repetition. What's wrong here? He broke the barrier. He allowed himself to fail. You can't do this with a lot of weight. This can become quite dangerous. But if you do it with little weight, you teach people to lose fear to fail. Just always be careful. It mustn't be too intense. Mustn't be anything that can injure your athletes. You can do it with no weight too. It's just a mental thing. On the other hand side, if we talk about mental components, one of the key philosophy corner points in my coaching vision is to produce a trust inside the athletes that everything they are asked to do is something that they are prepared to do. In the fall and winter, where we do quite a lot of this here, I will never ask them to do a 2K full race unless they really want to. I don't do all-out tests because I don't train them to do all-out tests. I want to improve their 2 millimole, 3 millimole, 4 millimole capacities. Why would I ask someone to go all out and say, this is a test now? No, I have not prepared you to do so. So my point is to test the people for what I have prepared them to do. Over the spring, I gradually become faster, stroke rates become higher, I do more intensities, I teach them to fail. Then they're ready to do all intensity tests. And this is where we start to do the first races. Doing that failing training with weight training is something I only do with new ones. I don't do it with pro athletes anymore. Because with pro athletes, I can do it in the water rowing specific or on the bio rowing specific. The weight training thing is just a small laboratory circumstance where I can go hands-on to the people. So if I add all these elements up, what I get is an individualized training that helps you to understand yourself better and helps me to judge better where you actually are. Training is a development. It consists of more than just power, more than just cardio, more than just mental. It's a whole thing. It's an interconnected thing of all. I hope this video gave you an overview of how I see things. Probably I've raised more questions that I've been able to answer simply because the video is too short. So if you want to learn more, come and join me in one of the seminars where I will talk about all the things in detail based on examples. Again, it's just my opinion. This is my experience. I'm not Mr. Know-It-All. I just have collected a bit of experience in my coaching life. What I do seems to work. I might change my opinion, but for now, this is my basis of knowledge. And what I do with the video is simply share my basis of knowledge. Guys, have a good day and see you soon. Bye-bye.